Hi, I'm Erik Voss, and this is a breakdown of The Walking Dead Season 8, Episode 5, The Big Scary You. And just when we thought we knew where this show was headed, the writers blow all of our minds with a freaking helicopter. What? Shouldn't that helicopter be a zombie now? That's how it works, right? I'm going to explain what this means, plus all the other questions you had after this episode, the subtle callbacks to past episodes, some cultural influences, and the deeper meaning. And real quick, this video was sponsored by Movement Watches and Sunglasses. Check out the description below for more information, or stick around for the end for details on a special offer. Okay, let's get started with our big question brought to us by Peter on Twitter. What is with the helicopter Rick saw? Is it connected with the helicopter from Season 1, Episode 1? Now, a bunch of you guys actually asked us about this, so let's dive into it. Toward the end of the episode, Rick, of course, hears the rotor blades of a helicopter, looks up, and sees a helicopter gliding over the trees. Now, there are a few ways we can look at this. On one level, yes, this is definitely a connection to the first episode of the series. Season 8 so far has been full of callbacks to Season 1. The writers wanted to celebrate 100 episodes with these intentional winks. I think it's pretty cool. In the pilot episode, when Rick rides a horse through downtown Atlanta, remember, he hears a helicopter, looks up, and sees a military helicopter's reflection on a skyscraper. He starts to follow it, but then runs into a street filled with walkers. Now, the show never followed up officially on what this helicopter was, or who piloted it, or where it was headed. Some believe that it was the military helicopter that we saw in Season 3 with that guy Wells, found by Michonne and Andrea, and leading to the governor killing that guy's unit. It all could have been that same helicopter. Others believe that helicopter in the pilot could have been a hallucination by Rick, like that imaginary phone call he had with Lori after she died. That's an interesting theory, but I don't think it's the case. The Lori call was adapted from Robert Kirkman's comics. It was a tragic, impressionistic moment that took us inside Rick's chaotic grief as he struggled to process Lori's death. In that context, a surreal hallucination kind of made sense. Witnessing a military helicopter while relatively mentally stable is a different story. So assuming this helicopter is real, to whom does it belong? Now, one explanation is it belongs to the Saviors. Earlier in the episode, Simon suggested to Negan to give Gregory a chance at the hilltop, and if it doesn't work out, quote, take a flyer to the place and kill everyone there. And some online have believed take a flyer meant Simon was suggesting to take a helicopter, fly over to the hilltop, and blast fly to the Valkyries as they rain hell on all those sorghum farmers. Fun, but not likely. Take a flyer is an idiom meaning take a chance or roll the dice. Simon is just suggesting to gamble by trusting Gregory with the worst case scenario of exterminating the threat. Also, this doesn't exactly make sense. Like, why use a helicopter when you can just drive over there and kill them just as easily? This is a hilltop we're talking about here. It's Colonial Williamsburg. Their deadliest weapon is a spear. So using an attack helicopter on the hilltop would be like using an attack helicopter on a hilltop. Also, Simon said, take a flyer, meaning the Saviors would have several helicopters. So yeah, this wasn't what Simon said. You're out. Meanwhile, there was another line from a savior, the Captain Regina, who proposes a plan to get a small crew out of the sanctuary and come back with something she called the Fat Lady. Now, that could be the Savior's code name for that Browning 50 caliber machine gun that we've seen in recent episodes. That would definitely be useful to clear that walker horde outside of the sanctuary. Or it could refer to this helicopter, in which case Regina could be proposing an airlift evacuation. Now to me, that sounds like not the best plan either. Like airlifting all the sanctuary workers and their families on one helicopter, that would take forever and it would leave them exposed to all the sniper fire that they're worried about. Now I'm guessing the Fat Lady is named after the phrase "It ain't over till the Fat Lady sings," like maybe in addition to classical music, the Saviors are into opera as well. And whatever weapon they would nickname the Fat Lady must be extremely loud and show-ending in some way. So maybe that Browning machine gun or some armored vehicle like a tank. Yeah, I'm gonna go with tank. The other explanation, which I think is more likely, is that this helicopter belongs to a different group altogether, a new one that we haven't seen yet. Now to me, this is why Rick seeing this helicopter is so exciting. It returns us to that state of mystery that we had in the early seasons. Like, how large is this world exactly? Has the military collapsed entirely, or are there still small units of it, like a 28 Days Later situation? Now there is one group from the comics that this could belong to that would be very interesting for the show to bring in this early, but I guess it's kind of a spoiler, so if you don't want to know anything, if you haven't really read the comics, skip to this time. Okay, so very recently on Robert Kirkman's comic timeline, which are now way beyond the show's current time period of the war with Negan, a new mysterious community is introduced. They are called the Commonwealth. We really don't know too much about them other than the fact that they wear futuristic white armor, almost like stormtroopers from Star Wars, and they have advanced military-grade weaponry. Now, it's very possible that they would have also their hands on a military helicopter, but considering there's so much else from the comics between this Negan war and the Commonwealth, bringing in these guys this early would be super premature. So, while it may not be the most intriguing possibility, I think this helicopter is just going to belong to a group that is completely new to the show. Okay, there was another big question you guys were asking about, brought to us on Twitter by Jojo. Was Gabriel bitten? So one of the final shots of the episode shows us Eugene visiting Gabriel in captivity in a prison in the sanctuary, finding him sweating bullets and shivering. Now this was after Gabriel shoved through that crowd of walkers with Negan covered in walker guts. So did Gabriel get bitten? Did any of those walker guts get in his mouth? My theory is no. I rewatched that scene over and over and over again, and at no point did we see him get bitten, at least on screen. And while sure, maybe he tasted some of that Virginia Sun Steam Walker goo, it's probably not making him sick here. That's right, I think he is faking it. Gabriel tells Eugene that the Saviors have Maggie's doctor, Harlan Carson, and I think him flopping here is part of his plan to break Carson out of the sanctuary and return him to Maggie to help deliver baby Ree. Or maybe just the memory of locking out his parishioners is causing him to sweat like a Gabriel in church. Now, I'll address more questions as we go, but for now, let's move on to the ways this episode connected to past episodes in our segment, Callbacks. In the opening scene, Simon brings Gregory breakfast in bed, including some sorghum pancakes. Now, this is a callback to episode 3 of this season when Cal accused Gregory at the hilltop of stealing sorghum pancakes from a baby. Yeah. Shortly after this, Negan says to Gabriel, "Mask you something." Now, this is a callback to the season premiere when he said, "Mask you something, Rick," to Rick outside. And in both cases, these are intentional nods by the writers to Shane, the "Mask you something, Rick" meme. Later, as a thank you gift for having his back earlier, Eugene rewards Dwight with a jar of pickles. Now, those pickles were the ones Eugene took for himself when he got acclimated in the sanctuary in episode 11 of last season. They were brined from cucumbers looted from the hilltop, grown by his friends. Former friends. Now, I guess you could say they were a symbol of this pickle man brining into a new form, shifting his loyalty to the sanctuary. And now by giving these pickles away, he's putting the burden of shifting loyalties on Dwight now, a two-faced man caught in a pickle of his own. I know, I'm mixing all kind of meanings for pickle here. Eugene also notices Dwight's painted handmade soldier chess pieces, which he later realizes is a red-handed clue of Dwight's treason. Now, the reason Dwight has had to freshly paint these is we know that he has expended these figurines in the past as carriers of secret messages to his bro buddy of Daryl. So even without Eugene seeing this matching paint stamp later, the fact that these figurines are freshly painted to begin with already should be a clue to us. Later, notice how Rick's hand is still wrapped when he fights with Daryl. Now, this is a continuity detail and a callback to last season when he impaled his hand on Winston while proving his worth to the scavengers. Why even bother? Now, I like how this wound persists as a reminder of the mistake of trusting the trash people at any point. By the way, it looks like he's about to make that same mistake next episode. And Rick and Daryl's boy fight results in the two of them completely losing the loot that they were fighting over, with the truck containing the machine gun and the dynamite blowing up. Now, this parallels that episode back in season 6 when Rick and Daryl finally scored a truck of food and supplies, but then, thanks to losing their cool, they both ended up watching sadly as their loot slipped through their fingers. I also like how after this fight, Rick growls to Daryl, "Chokehold's illegal, asshole," and Daryl responds, "Yes, it is." This is a callback to season 1 when Daryl attacked Rick and Shane put him in a chokehold, an illegal police takedown move that really pissed off Daryl. Now, and in speaking of season 1, Negan and Gabriel used these same Walker Guts cover tactic to mask the scent that Rick and Glenn used in the first season when they were stuck in a similar jam. It's come up a bunch of times throughout the series. But let's move on to some cultural influences on this episode in our segment, Under the Influence, which, by the way, does this segment name even make sense? Like, it's kind of a drug thing, but I guess it kind of makes sense because drugs, like pop culture references, can influence you in a cool, eye-opening way, but too many references kind of robs you of your unique identity. I'm thinking about this too hard. Anyway, let's start with the way religion influences this episode. Before the credits, Gabriel tells Negan, "I'm here to take your confession." Now, of course, this episode ends up being somewhat of a confession by Negan. He reveals that he had a wife that he cheated on, leading to his less than sacred sacred attitude toward marriage, and that he used to work with kids, which is a nod to his backstory in the comics, which I won't talk about here in case the show still plans to reveal that origin as a big surprise. But this episode also becomes a confession for Gabriel as well. In order to induce a confession out of Negan, he confesses his deepest, darkest secret, locking his congregation out of his church. In a way, this episode compares these two flawed men, asking us which one of them is truly more godlike. Gabriel is more of a New Testament God, a God of forgiveness and redemption and turning the other cheek. Meanwhile, Negan is definitely an Old Testament God, a God of wrath and fear and symbolic demonstrations of power, forcing people to kneel before him. This episode, Negan bellows to his captains and to Gregory that people are a resource, which is a twisted worldview that casts himself as a savior somehow, a force that the world needs to save it from the abyss. But none of these characters are the true gods of this world, it turns out, as this episode ends with the reveal of others can just soar over these petty conflicts. This potential deus ex machina completely reframes this war between Negan and Rick, kind of like the rescue at the end of The Lord of the Flies. Is this all-out war really the end-all, be-all we thought it was gonna be? Will these new gods from above pick a side in this war? This represents such an interesting unknown quantity. And that brings us to the deeper meaning of this episode, titled The Big Scary You, a line from Gregory earlier, who defined that you as the unknown. Fear of the unknown is historically mankind's greatest, most powerful motivator. It's the source of so many things in our world: religion, war, racism, the insurance industry. In Negan's case, he exploits that fear with unpredictable, extreme measures. Perhaps his scariest quality is how at any moment you're never quite sure whether Negan's gonna bash your brains in. But that mystery also works against Negan this episode. When he is feared dead by his people, a panic almost arises in the sanctuary, threatening his very way of life from the inside until his dominance once again gets restored as a known quantity. But the arrival of this helicopter, offering a new dimension to this world, definitely threatens to oust him as an even bigger, scarier you. Okay, let's check in on this week's kill count. We saw really only 2 on-screen human casualties this week. Iaeger, the savior who drove the truck, who bled out and then was put down by Rick, and another insubordinate savior that Regina killed in the sanctuary. But in terms of who dropped the most bodies, Gabriel tops the list. He shot 7 walkers and whacked another over the head. And considering, guys, we don't really know how many people were in his congregation, Gabriel could be responsible for the most deaths of any one person on The Walking Dead. And let's talk about some predictions for next week's episode, episode 6, titled The King, the Widow, and Rick. Remember, those are the saviors' names for Ezekiel, Maggie, and Rick, the 3 leaders of the kingdom, the hilltop, and Alexandria, whom the saviors have been ordered not to kill. Rick will also apparently return to the junkyard and try to make some deal with the scavengers. That guy that we saw whistling at the end of the episode has similar clothes to the scavengers, and remember, they have also been known to signal each other with whistles. After seeing such a massive defeat for the kingdom last episode, I could see this being a defeat for the hilltop. There may be more savior POWs than residents of the hilltop, and with Gregory there, things aren't really looking too good for Maggie. In the final 3 episodes of this half season, I'm predicting Rick's forces might have to fall back to Alexandria. A question for you guys. What do you think the history was between Negan and Simon? Remember, when Simon was too vocal with his war strategy, Negan snapped at him and asked if they were backsliding. Now, a theory I'll throw out there, Negan hinted to Gabriel that he had to take the sanctuary by force from previous occupants who didn't have their shit together. I'm thinking Simon was one of the higher-ups of that previous group that Negan's forces absorbed, with Simon initially struggling to play by Negan's rules, but eventually getting in line. Essentially, what Rick could become if he surrendered to Negan. Let me know your thoughts down below, or tweet me directly at Erik Voss and follow New Rockstars on Twitter at New Rockstars for updates on our videos. Now, a quick thanks to Movement for sponsoring this video. Movement offers super stylish watches and sunglasses that I wear all the time. They have this sleek minimalist design, nothing too flashy to snag some walkers, or if you occasionally look like a walker as I do, you would be surprised how well a classy Movement watch or sunglasses cleans you up. The watches start at $95 and sunglasses at $70, $10, and you can get them polarized. You know, keep the sun out of your eyes while you're searching the skies for helicopters. Get $15 off today, plus free shipping and free returns. Just go to mvmt.com/newrockstars and use the code NEWROCKSTARS when checking out, or you can click on the link in the description. Come on, guys, let's join the movement. Carl! And like and share this video, and subscribe to New Rockstars for deep analysis of all the stuff that you love. And also check out my breakdowns from the first 4 episodes this season for more theories and insight into season 8 of The Walking Dead. And if you really love this channel and want to help us grow, you can contribute to us on Patreon. Big thanks to all of our donors, especially Kenny Smith. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.